How does an economy reach at its equilibrium level? To explain this, first we need to explain aggregate demand. Aggregate demand is the total demand for all final goods and services in an economy. The aggregate demand curve always starts from some positive value from the vertical axis. This is x-axis, this is y-axis, this is point of origin. At the horizontal axis, we measure income, and on the vertical axis, we measure aggregate demand. This is AD curve, aggregate demand curve. Aggregate demand curve always starts from some positive value and not from the zero. It indicates that even if the income of the consumer is zero, even then he will consume at least this minimum level of goods or income. This is called autonomous consumption. So aggregate demand starts from the autonomous consumption level and increases as the income rises. That is why aggregate demand is upward sloping to the right side. The next one is aggregate supply. This is x-axis, this is y-axis, this is the point of origin. At horizontal axis, we measure income and employment, and on the vertical axis, we measure aggregate supply. The aggregate supply curve always starts from the point of origin and increases upward to the right side with the increase in income and employment level. This is aggregate supply. The definition of aggregate supply is the total supply of all final goods and services that are produced by the producers in the economy for the purpose of sale. Aggregate supply can also be termed as total income, because whatever the producer produce for supply, in return they get income. And aggregate demand can also be termed as total expenditure, because whatever is demanded in the economy, to meet that demand we need to spend money. That is why aggregate demand is always equal to total expenditure and aggregate supply is always equal to total income. The economy will be at equilibrium where aggregate demand is equal to aggregate supply, means total expenditure is equal to total income. The equilibrium level we can show in the following diagram. This is x-axis, this is y-axis, this is point of origin. On the horizontal axis, we measure income and employment. We can also denote here output level. And on the vertical axis, we measure aggregate demand and aggregate supply, because both the curves will be shown in this diagram. Now we understand that why the aggregate demand curve starts from some positive value and goes upward to the right side. This is AD. And why aggregate supply initiates from the point of origin and goes upward to the right side. This is aggregate supply. The economy will be at equilibrium at a point where AD and AS intersect each other. Means this point E. This is equilibrium level of economy. At this point, say for suppose 500 level of income, the aggregate demand and aggregate supply are equal at 600 level. So at 500 level of income, the aggregate demand is also 600 and aggregate supply is also 600. Any deviation from this level will not be permanent and will again reach at equilibrium level. For example, if we suppose that the income level is 800 at this point, if we meet this line further up to the aggregate demand curve and aggregate supply, this dotted line, it means at this level the aggregate demand falls short of the aggregate supply. Means the producers are producing more goods and services, but there is no demand in the market. That is why these surplus goods will start piling in the stock. This will, whenever there is excess demand, this portion shows excess supply. Whenever there is excess supply in the market, it will always force the price downward and will cause deflationary pressure, deflationary situation in the economy. To cover up this situation, the producer will cut down their production towards the 500 level, that is equilibrium. It will reduce the employment level and income level also, and again the economy will reach at equilibrium point at the level where it was 500. In the second situation, if we suppose the economy is at equilibrium, say for 300, so at this level the aggregate demand is this much, whereas aggregate supply is this much, and aggregate demand is more than the aggregate supply. Means people are demanding more goods and services, but the producers are not able to meet the demand of the economy. That is why there is this portion shows the excess demand. Excess demand. Whenever there is excess demand in the market, it will always force the price up and will cause inflation in the economy. To avoid the situation of inflation in the economy, the producer will increase the production, will meet up the demand, and will increase output level. This will also increase the employment level and income level, and again the economy will reach at its equilibrium point. That is why any deviation from the equilibrium point is not stable, and economy again automatically will reach at the equilibrium point.